We've got a video focused on comments regarding one Novak Djokovic today. One set comes from former top 25 in the world tennis player Misha Zverev, and another comes from an ex-coach of Serena Williams. What were the insights that they provided, and what kind of year has Novak Djokovic had? We'll be letting you in on all of the details as the video progresses, so be sure to stick around till the end and let's get started. How has Novak Djokovic fared this year? How has 2022 treated him? It's not an exaggeration to claim that Novak Djokovic has had a pretty troubled season, at least by his standards. That is, of course, not the least of which because of his choice to opt out of taking any vaccine for COVID-19, despite the pressure of not just the overseers of tennis, but of the international governments that house these tournaments. Indeed, due to that, he missed the 2022 editions of both the Australian Open and the US Open, two of the biggest tournaments of the year, two major tournaments that Djokovic would have likely been the favorite to win had he managed to attend. His performances haven't always been quite to his normal standard either, but the inability to represent himself in some of the year's most important tournaments is the bigger culprit than anything as it regards to his unceremonious fall down the ATP rankings. He's been ranked as low as 7th for much of the latter half of 2022. For most, 7th place would be a wonderful spot to be, but for Djokovic, the standards are a bit different. Before this year, the last time he was outside the top 3 was in 2018. He was at number 10 going into August of that year, and that's how far back you have to go to see him fall lower than now. No doubt, his lack of vaccination had a lot to do with this, and not only did he miss out on 2 of the aforementioned majors, but also ended up giving up on each of the American Masters 1000 tournaments, be it the Indian Wells, Miami, Montreal, or Cincinnati editions. That's a lot of points that he simply didn't play for. Nonetheless, 2022 was not entirely without highlights. He wouldn't still be in the top 10 if that were the case. He did, of course, claim the 2022 Wimbledon Singles Male Championship, the 7th time in his career that the Joker, as some know him, has taken the most historic of tennis's major tournaments. In doing so, he equaled his own hero, Pete Sampras, as far as wins at Wimbledon go, and inched even closer to matching rival Rafael Nadal in the coveted all-time Grand Slam standings. What's more, his win in Tel Aviv earned the Serbian his 89th title and further fueled his odds of making it into the ATP finals. When speaking at Eurosport, Russian-born German tennis ace Misha Zverev spoke on Djokovic and the general mindset of being a high-level tennis player in general. Zverev is currently not high on the rankings at all, at number 920 in the singles ranks, but that's the result of a major downswing, as just a few years ago, he was several hundred spots higher. Actually, his peak saw him as high as number 25 in the world. That was in mid-2017, a year that saw him reach many of his best Grand Slam results, most notably making it to the quarterfinals of the Australian Open. That makes him a solid enough expert on these things, and so that being the case, what did Misha Zverev have to say about Novak Djokovic? He addressed Djokovic's age first off. Djokovic is 35 years old, which isn't particularly up there by most standards, but is relatively old to be a high-level professional athlete. Maybe not necessarily retirement age, but the age where you start thinking about and planning towards that retirement. Roger Federer, one of Djokovic's main rivals, just recently retired at the age of 41, and in the years leading up to that, while still producing solid results, his peak was clearly behind him, as you have to go back to 2018 to see the last Grand Slam that he won. That was the 2018 Australian Open, which took place when Federer was 36, just a year older than Djokovic is now. Is that a sign for the Serbian player that his prime is soon to come to a close as well? Maybe, but maybe not in Zverev's estimation. He said that the way Novak Djokovic looks out there, he seems to be able to keep playing at a high level for another 3 or 4 years. Zverev said that age is nothing but a number so long as you do everything right on the court and off of it, just as Djokovic does in his mind. However, while he believes he'll be able to excel for years to come, he does harbor some doubts as to whether or not he can reach the apex of the sport again. He said on this, quote, "I don't know if he will be world number 1 again. The big issue will be, will he play the Australian Open?" End quote. That's a frequently uttered statement. Has Djokovic responded to this idea? To that sentiment, Djokovic made a statement after his most recent win in Tel Aviv and detailed his personal approach, which is to try and win tournaments wherever he is. And he noted how glad he was that he has with him a team of people surrounding him that help ensure that he is in the best possible shape to remain a contender for any title that he's eligible for. The one-time number 1 on the planet also took the time to thank the crowd in Tel Aviv for being so friendly and supportive of him during the week. He mentioned that he hadn't played in a tournament in 3 months at that point, and so that really served as extra inspiration for him to do as well as he possibly could have, especially given the reception that he'd gotten throughout the week. Obviously, he came under a lot of scrutiny after the absolute debacle that was his attempted entry into the Australian Open, which kicked off the year. Ever since then, his vaccination status, or lack thereof, has made him a natural target of the media, and his reputation has suffered a pretty severe hit as well, as a result of his reluctance to take the jab. During his time in Israel to play at the Tel Aviv Lviv Watergen Open, he spoke to I24 News about the matter. He mentioned the media had shown a lot of negative spotlight on him and said that they weren't particularly nice to him. But in his words, he expected that as they tend to behave that way. This may be a good time to say that grouping every form of news in the world into one big monolith called the media is not a particularly good exercise. It's a great means of blurring media literacy. Technically, this very video could be considered part of the media since we're sharing news as soon as we get the chance to, but that's the bulk of what we do. So maybe we're biased out there, but it's fair to say that we should also have a little insight into that. With that small note out of the way, let's talk about her next subject. Why has Novak Djokovic been playing low-tier events back-to-back? We just talked about his time in Tel Aviv. He followed up that appearance by showing up at the 2022 Astana Open, which he of course won. But that's another lower-tier tournament. Why would such a big name in the sport and a man his age, with only so many reps left in him, be playing at these tournaments with so few points on the line? Well, Patrick Mouratoglou, the former coach of Serena Williams and current coach of Simona Halep, gave his evaluation of this decision. He took to his Instagram account to give an explanation as to why the high-level player is going to these low events, saying that Novak has a goal to win as many Grand Slams as humanly possible, since he's in a race with Rafael Nadal over it, and he doesn't have a lot of chances to do that right now, thanks to his life choices, since he wasn't able to play in 2 of the 4 majors this year and may not next year either. He's not being allowed into events that require COVID vaccinations, and has put his career in jeopardy in more ways than you might think. As Mouratoglou noted, that in order to stay in sharp enough swing to win these events, quote, you need matches, you need to be in the rhythm, and you need to win matches. In his words, not having any kind of short-term goal creates unneeded hurdles for the player, which is what Djokovic is struggling with. That's one of the reasons why he plays these lower-level tournaments, to keep the proper rhythm and motivation to stay ready for the Australian Open, which he at least hopes to be able to play in, though at the moment we're just a couple of months out from the 2023 edition, and that's still a bit of a question mark. And that is all the time we have for today's video. What are your thoughts on Novak Djokovic? Good or bad? Be sure to let us hear, as we'd love nothing more than to kickstart a discussion on this. Do you feel the comments from these 2 experts are sensible? Do you expect Djokovic to play at the Australian Open? Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, and until next time, thanks for watching.